Hi everybody, I'm Meredith Katz. I'm, as we said, a lecturer in social studies education, and I'm just finishing my second year at Queens College. Right. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today to learn with you and from you. And so I'm going to be talking also, it's sort of a good pairing, I think, Elena, of the two, the previous presentation and this one. This is another example of an active learning technique that I use in particular, in social studies education, probably all of us, but in social studies in particular, we talk about citizenship education and wanting citizens in a democratic society to be able to engage in dialogue. So everything we do in every class always has that, you have to talk, you have to engage, we have to share multiple perspectives as much as possible to get our students as future teachers comfortable with doing it themselves, which they don't come in necessarily comfortable with, so that they might even have a chance of facilitating it with their own students someday. So the technique I'm going to share is to promote more dialogue, discussion, even debate, if you want to call it that. And as you can see, we're going to talk about role-playing for exploring big questions. And I will just say that whatever your field is, we all have big questions, and so you can apply it however you want. I chose a question today that we can use for an example. I do research in this area. I have experience working in an 8-week immersive simulation that's online that I'm happy to talk about at the end with graduate students and middle school students. We call them the big students and the little students. And I will talk about all that, but first I just want to do an example of role-playing, both to show that you could do it in 20 minutes and it could be a meaningful part, or other ways you could spend weeks on it. So to show that you can do something impactful in a short amount of time. But also, if we do this together, then we'll have a common experience that we can then talk about what are the advantages and challenges of this approach. So here's the question that we're going to talk about today. Okay, cell phones in the college classroom, yay or nay? Now please, just put to the back of your mind, I don't know if we can ban them, probably we can't. Don't worry about the legal status. And don't worry about whether Queens College has a policy or CUNY has a policy. Just imagine that there was the potential that you could ban cell phones in your classroom if you wanted to. Okay, so the first thing that I do when I do a role play with students is I ask them to think about, or to at least establish, their own starting opinions. I'm going to ask you right now on whatever paper that you have in front of you, just take a minute to write down your starting position about should cell phones be banned from college classrooms, particularly your classroom, and maybe a little bit of why. So I'll give you about a minute to do that. And here, I'll take out my cell phone and try to time it, but I'm bad at this. And now, like any good social studies or any good high school teacher, okay, and in the interest of time, now we're going to go on so that we get this experience together. So the next part of any kind of role play situation is to choose or to be assigned a character. And I'm going to assign you, again, in the interest of time, I am going to assign you a character in a minute. And after the fact, we'll talk about what are the advantages of assigning characters versus letting students have free choice of their character, because I've done both, and there are definite advantages in both ways. And I'm going to ask you to write down 3 biological facts about the character that you are getting assigned, and then write out what you think your character's response to that question would be. And I'll just say ahead of time, some of them are biographical figures with real biographies, and some of them are more what you call roles, right? They're a parent, a professor, a student, that kind of thing. So if you get Abraham Lincoln, spoiler alert, then you can do the best you can to be, what you know about him. This is not a high-stakes, heavy-lifting research activity, although, of course, it could be, but it is not in this case. And then if you get a professor who doesn't have a cell phone, then you can, write down, you can make that up. That's a little more creative at this particular moment. And again, maybe you're going to get somebody who's a lot like you, and maybe you're going to get somebody who is not like you. So that's up for you to decide. All right, so you're already doing the next step, which is turn and talk. This is a tried and true for those of you who've been in school, pre-K through 12 schools. This is a way that we do get students to talk to each other in a variety of different ways, so that they have a smaller stage before they might talk to the whole class. So this for our intents and purposes. We did the what do I think by myself. We did who am I as my character. Now we're going to do the actual talking in character. Again, you can see this is going to be a very short-term interaction, but it helps to illustrate what we're trying to do. So you're going to introduce yourself. Now I was going to say to the person sitting next to you, but I mean we're also sitting in table groups, so if you want to do it table-wide, that's totally fine. But introduce yourself in character to your partner. And then share your opinion in character, meaning speaking in the first person, about whether or not cell phones should be banned in the college classroom. And I will provide an example, and I'm going to call on my office mate, Dr. Melanie Waller, to demonstrate with me this activity. I'm sure you could figure it out, but it's helpful to have an example. So I am Queen Marie Antoinette. I was a queen of France up until 1793. I am in a very unfortunate demise, but you know, really, I didn't deserve it. And who are you, madame? Oh, here.
Taylor Swift. I'm Taylor Swift. I'm famous. I am an amazing singer, and I am a hardcore capitalist.
Capitalism. Capitalism, I don't know what that is at all, but okay. So I don't even know why you think, Mademoiselle Swift, you could come and approach me and talk to me. But anyway, because I'm the queen. But what is this thing? Qu'est-ce que c'est le cell phone? I have no idea what that kind of thing is, and I don't even understand this concept of college classroom. I had tutors, I had governesses, I talked to my governess, they had to be nice to me. I don't understand what this thing is about a cell phone.
Marie, just so you know,
Marie.
I'm a queen in my own right. And cell phones are so important to connect young people and to make sure that they can watch reels and TikToks and they can go to my concert and stream my concert and buy things for my concert and look at videos of my concert and travel the world to go to my concert. And the phones are a huge part of that.
Sasufi, that's enough. It's enough already. I don't need to hear from the peasants anymore, but thank you. All right, you get the general idea of two people coming from different worlds talking about it? Thank you so much. That was really... That was great random
Taylor Swift.
Anyway, okay, so now let's give you guys about 5 minutes to do this kind of engagement yourselves, introduce yourselves in character, and have a conversation about the issues of cell phones. Okay, everybody, ding, ding, ding. Let's wrap this up for this small part and move on, but that was an amazing buzz in the room. I heard lots of laughing. I heard a lot of talking. I heard a lot of different kinds of conversations, and I appreciate you're willing to play along, for the purposes of this exercise, and also hopefully imagining your own students in this kind of situation. So again, I meant, the cell phone issue, maybe it's not the hottest topic, the biggest topic, but it is for sure for this group of people, I imagine, something that we all think about and something that we all have our own opinions on. So that's why I chose it. For any kind of role play activity, it's important to do some kind of debriefing, really for any educational activity. I think that's what we've all been talking about here, right? This reflection piece, but it's particularly important in a role play because you have to give the student the opportunity to take off the character and you have to give the class the chance to come back to its regularly scheduled program. Especially, I'll just put in there when it's maybe more of a controversial issue that you're discussing and you've assigned roles and you need to have students playing roles that are not gonna, maybe that they don't agree with or that someone in the class is not gonna agree with, and you need to give students a chance to say like, that was my character, that wasn't me, this is what I really think. So in that sense, number 3, taking off your character is always really, really important at the end of a role play. But in terms of what are the advantages of using a role play, what they could be learning, you want students to ask themselves, right? It's about multiple perspectives. So you got you and you got your character. You already got 2 perspectives. They might be close together, they might be far apart, they might be, in the middle there somewhere. So you want students to ask themselves, how is my opinion the same as or different from my characters? And that's, something that you think of naturally, but you can make it more conscious for them. And then you want to ask them, what opinions did I hear from the group that I hadn't heard or considered previously, which you could ask that without role-playing, but role-playing magnifies the number of perspectives in the group. So there's this professor at University of Wisconsin, whose name is Diana Hess, which is a very famous person in social studies world and writes a lot about discussion. And she says, you could lament that you live in a homogeneous area, which actually we don't, but you could lament where if you lived in Wisconsin that it was more homogeneous. And so she says, but don't worry, when kids come to school from their family that is already, right, even if it's all white and it's all, Republican or whatever that even means these days, it's more diverse than it was when they were at home. But then I'll say if you add on the role playing, that's where you have the opportunity within a small, group of 25 to add in even more perspectives. And I will also say that, I don't know about you, I came to Queens College thinking that these kids were going to talk, right? That they were going to have a lot of different perspectives, and I was really excited. And I have found that I have to really, really, really push them to get them to share their opinions about things. And I'm still, it's only 2 years, I'm trying to unpack that. But if you give them a role, then they're talking what somebody else would say, and you're giving them a very concrete activity. I told you, the topic to talk about. So those are some things to think about. And I'm just saying that if you ask them after a role play, what opinions did you hear that you hadn't heard or considered previously, it means something different in the context of students playing a role than just what everybody else said, their peers who they're supposed to be forming relationships with. So I'd love to hear just a few examples of maybe specific elements of the conversation that you heard that were, interesting or insightful. Okay, you want to maybe just share that, address either one of those, two of those, or even let's just go to you as an educator. So is there anyone who could share a little bit of something interesting or exciting or funny that came up in their conversation? Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, one thing that happened is that I couldn't stay in character because I'm so much for banning cell phones in classrooms.
And what did you get?
And I had to be a college student who has a school-aged child or children, and I need to stay available for texts from schools or whatever emergencies.
Right, exactly.
And so it was challenging that way, but I couldn't sustain this. And I have a 3-year-old, and I'm for banning cell phones. So it's I can see both sides, but I'm very still again. So I couldn't stay in character. It was an impossible exercise.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great example. Thank you. Anybody have any students who are parents of young children in your classes? Right. We all have those people.
I had the same character, but I was able to smuggle my prejudices into that character's perspective by justifying not wanting, being a parent, I'd want my cell phone with me in case there was an emergency, but I have so little time to spend on my studies, I knew I wouldn't want to be distracted by having my phone out during class, so I was against at least cell phones being out.
Okay, thank you.
But I don't know if that's honest or just
that is all part of the process. All right, we have Eric. You want to do yours? We have one more, and then we'll move on. But that's great just to see two people who went in different directions.
I'll go from the last question. Two things. One, I remember a very strong memory in middle school doing role playing, and that's stayed with me. Mm-hmm. And finding interesting consensus of the class to be against, I still remember, to be against U.S. involvement in World War I, which I to this day found one. It was interesting that we all came to that at that age. And then in my own teaching, when I was teaching a full class, and what a similar experience, the consensus that the class comes to at the end is something that I couldn't predict in what we were we were doing, kind of a model UN type of simulation, and the conclusions and the way that it votes at the end is always interesting.
Right. Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. Those are really interesting things to share, and I'll just finish up by saying some of these things which I've said already, but just to put it all together. And there is research that supports all of this if you want to read it. But for sure, the role playing offers a cover or a mask for students who take risks in the classroom that in a conversation that they might not feel comfortable taking otherwise. There's definitely an increased sense of student agency from character development. So even though this is a great example, even though I assigned you right? The character, you developed it differently. If you are Taylor Swift, if you are Abraham Lincoln, that's a lot to choose from. You only have to talk about what you want to. You still have agency in shaping the character. Talk about shaping, right? It's a different kind of shaping. Definitely the stuff about immersion in multiple perspectives increases critical thinking. We all like to say that, but here's an example of actually doing it. And similarly, building empathy with multiple perspectives. And I will say, even if it's a struggle, the power of thinking and writing in the first person is like, it really does something, right? It really brings you to a different level than, where you were before. So I would say that all of that adds up to increased engagement with big questions, however you define them. And I will wrap it up with that. I have some, examples of my fun simulation, but if you want to hear about that another time, here, I'll just show you very quickly, right? So I actually have students that I teach, right? And I work with a team. It's not just me. And we work with a team of middle schools, and they have, there's a middle school student and the middle school teacher. And so we're all playing characters over 8 weeks, debating in a Facebook-like, back and forth asynchronously about whatever the topic is about, and it's a fascinating experience. Okay, I'll stop.